Trigger-happy and reckless, paava Paul Corovic was considered cavalier even by the standards of 1990 seconds. Gangland Salford was the king in his counting house. But a grainy photograph of gang boss paava Paul Corovic checking his loot in the living room of his Salford home would lead to the downfall of one of the most prolific armed robbers Greater Manchester had ever seen. Trigger-happy and reckless, Corkovic was considered cavalier even by the standards of 1990 seconds Gangland Salford. And at a time when the city wasn't exactly short of armed robbers, Corkovic was perhaps the most notorious, was released from a stretch in prison in October 1994. But rather than turn his back on the life that had put him there, Corkovic decided to double down on his criminal activity. Locked up, he'd apparently decided he wanted to make £1 million. And he knew only one way to earn that kind of cash. On his release, he began putting together a crew of other blaggers 10 years younger than him. They set up a base in a lockup at Earlham Industrial Estate and equipped themselves with the tools of their trade: sawn-off shotguns, sledgehammers, machetes, baseball bats, and most terrifyingly an AK-47 assault rifle. Within a month of Corkovic's release, the gang had targeted a Morrison's supermarket in Eccles and a cash and carry at Salford Quays. Then they hit the Stanley Albion Casino in Pendleton in an audacious daylight raid. After threatening a Securicor guard, they bundled him to the cash office and smashed its security screen before firing a shot into the ceiling to terrify the 40 customers. They then grabbed £100,000 in cash bags and boxes before fleeing in a stolen car. As the getaway vehicle sped from the scene, witnesses reported seeing one of the gang holding a cash box out of the window with red smoke pouring from it. Securicor offered a £5,000 reward for their capture.
A tremendous amount of planning went into this crime, a detective later said. They are obviously a professional team. But if the casino was a textbook job, a raid on a Sainsbury's supermarket on Regent Road, Ordsall the following month didn't quite go to plan. Armed with shotguns and a sledgehammer, once more the gang targeted Securicor guards as they arrived to collect the takings. But after two of the guards ran into the warehouse and hid in the canteen, the robbers grabbed a female member of staff and made her to take them to the cash office. As 200 shocked shoppers were forced to lie on the floor, the gang couldn't force open the locked steel doors. Thwarted, they fled in a stolen Rover, but crashed into another car at a roundabout and were forced to run. A passing police officer bravely gave chase, detaining one of the gang by grabbing him by the leg as he tried to climb a fence. Corkovic managed to escape, but despite the cock-up he refused to lay low. Further raids followed at NatWest branches in Prestwich and Sedgley Park and AB&Q in Corley. By the time they did over, as it was their 8th raid in just 5 months, in total the gang had stolen a staggering £275,000. But the police were closing in. And being known to Corkovic and the gang, detectives had the unit in Earlham under close surveillance, and in April 1995, they pounced. Acting on special authorization from the chief constable, a specially assembled team of armed officers fired CS gas and a stun grenade into the lockup. In the confusion, Corkovic managed to escape in a car, but it was to be a short-lived reprieve. During the first trial, the jury couldn't reach a verdict, but by the time Corkovic was put in the dock again, the prosecution had a new, crucial piece of evidence. He had been pictured counting out wads of notes in the living room of his Salford home alongside his partner in crime, Jason McFeely. His lawyers tried to keep the damning photograph from the eyes of a jury, claiming it had been taken before the robberies had been committed and that the cash was lawfully his. But a shrewd detective had enhanced the pic and revealed Corkovic was wearing a wedding ring. And unfortunately for him, police could prove he'd got married at the time of the crimes. In fact, one raid, which netted around £100,000, was carried out just 3 days before the lavish ceremony and reception. The ring of truth helped persuade jurors of the gang's guilt. Corkovic, then 33, became the region's longest-serving armed robber when he was jailed for 23 years. McFeely and for other members of the gang were also given lengthy sentences. You used meticulous planning and timing to steal hundreds of thousands of pounds, which has not been recovered. Judge David Owen told Corkovic. Firearms were discharged on a number of occasions, and one man was forced to kneel down with the barrel of a loaded shotgun pressed to his neck, followed by a demand of, "Give us cash or we will kill him." The people of Salford should be very relieved by these verdicts, added Chief Sep John Potts. The gang did not care who got in their way, and, in my opinion, it was only a matter of time before someone was shot. But remarkably, Corkovic wasn't finished there. In 2011, he was granted an early release from prison and was soon back up to his old tricks again, using the same tried and tested tactics. This time he teamed up with his nephew Jason Corkovic and his old pal Jason McFeely. Within months, Paul Corovic and McFeely netted £50,000 in daylight raids at NatWest, Reddish Stockport and Sainsbury's, Heaton Park, with cash delivery men threatened with axes. But the crime spree didn't last long. The gangsters were caught by a police surveillance operation as they prepared to rob a £90,000 cash delivery from a Stockport supermarket on April 19, 2012.